For my first film, All the Time in the World, I took on the role as editor. Our story, written by James Lai, followed two characters through the day of their life. It is obvious right from the beginning that their relationship has gone stale, and they're probably days away from breaking up. It is revealed at the end that the woman is pregnant. This leaves the audience with the question of whether or not they will stay together for the baby, or break up anyway. The brief included the task of non-verbal world building. To do this, right from the go we created the idea that the couple were not getting on well together, forcing the audience to ask why, and think about what happened before the film started. We continue this on right until the end, when it is revealed that the woman is pregnant. The argument that they have as the credits roll does not feature them arguing about the baby, it is simply about how lazy the woman is. This, again, leaves the audience with questions like, will they have the discussion? Will they stay together? Will she keep the baby? The restriction of only having 6 lines of dialogue actually works in our favour because it allowed us to show how empty their relationship is to the point where they have very little to say to each other. Elizabeth's performance in the film also helped a lot because her facial expression showed even further how she was not comfortable. From the start, director Ben Ellis Nicholson and the writer James Lai wanted to create a romance film. The inspiration which first came to mind was Eternal Sunshine of a Spotless Mind. This is because this is a romance film but with a spin. We wanted to create something similar, so we created an anti-romance film. We admired the melancholy feel of this and wanted to apply this to our own story. The cultural considerations we thought about for this film were from Japanese cinema, specifically Tokyo Story, and how the film doesn't concentrate on action but more the detail of human lives. Paul Schrader states that boredom is an aesthetic device, exactly what our film relates to. Through the uses and gratifications theory, our film fits under the category of identity. The audience will be able to see themselves in the film, as for many people it is a relatable situation that has happened to them or could happen to anyone. To enhance the story of the film as my role of editor, I added extra pauses in the characters' conversation to show that they don't have much to talk about. I added the fade to black to show the passing of time. I muffled the sound of the argument to show that it was in the distance and both remove the audience from the scene but also keep them as part of the story. It is at this point that we are no longer in the room with them and it is clear that we are an outsider looking in. Finally, I enhanced the shaky camera to make the audience feel part of the scene. For my role as editor, I feel I was able to help the story flow well. In the diner scene, I layered the conversation audio to allow the vocals to run smoothly. Without this, the scene would feel jarring going back and forth without any pacing. In the scene of the characters coming back into the house, I continuously added reaction shots of the man while the woman was sitting down. I did this so that the audience could constantly see how he was feeling and that he was getting frustrated and impatient. At the end of the film, I added moody music to intensify the mood of the scene. The first piano note is played as soon as he notices and picks up the pregnancy test. This is common use of music in film as it makes the audience feel the moment of realization at the same time as the character. As mentioned before, the brief was to focus on non-verbal world building. The way we did this I feel went well. We didn't do the cliche of creating a zombie apocalypse world, instead we created a world where the audience is looking into a snippet of the couple's lives. When editing, myself and the director, mainly myself, made the decision to make the film over the 3-minute mark, making it around 3 minutes and 45 seconds long. Although the brief was to have a maximum of 3 minutes, we felt the story needed the extra amount of time to really come across what the character's situation is. Although in the lecture the film was cut off at the 3-minute mark and wasn't continued, the payoff was about 4 seconds away. We are still happy with the decision to extend it, because when watched all the way through, the story makes sense and is worth watching. This opinion is also backed up by other people who watched it. They stated that the end makes the extra time worthwhile. Also, during the screening when the film was cut off, the judges said what they had watched so far was boring, so they didn't feel the need or want to watch any further. This was heartbreaking to hear, especially because, as mentioned, the payoff was so soon. In hindsight, we could have cut down the end to the 3 minutes, just for the sake of the viewing. This would have allowed us to gain feedback from the rest of the film, rather than just the 3 minutes. My storytelling ability has improved throughout this film greatly, especially in how editing can tell a story through pacing. I have learnt what is too quick and what is dragged out. My second film of the term was Soak, directed by Connie Shi. I was the DP for the shoot as this was what I wanted to focus on, but I was also the colourist. The story of our final film is about a woman who goes into the bathroom, gets into the bath, and then strange things happen. It starts with the door locking itself, then the bath water goes completely black, and finally she receives a text with a photo of herself in the bath taken from outside the window. I actually worked on 2 films for this brief. The first was a music video, but this would have been classed as experimental, which wouldn't have fit the brief. Because of this, I decided to take on another film too. We encountered many issues along the way for this film. Initially we had a completely different script near completion. Unfortunately, our original director dropped out of the project 3 days before we were meant to film. Because of this, just Connie and I had to start from scratch and write a new script. It is for this reason that the story doesn't have much to it. We came up with the story by thinking of ways to make an engaging film in a simple way. We were inspired by the lecture which talks about films taking place in one room only. We thought that by keeping the film in just one bathroom, we'd be able to not only concentrate on and perfect it, but also make it feel as relatable as possible. Our aim was to make the story about something which everyone had had a fear of at some point. With the idea of making the film in one room, we then found inspiration from Christopher Nolan's short film Doodlebug. The on-edge feel and intensity of being in one closed space was the mood we were trying to achieve. For the look of the film, I took inspiration from these photographs by British photographer Lithium. Looking at the colour palettes of both these photos and my film, I achieved my vision well. I also found inspiration in the shooting styles of James Friend's work in the TV series Patrick Melrose. I admired his use of disturbingly wide lenses and empty spaces in the frame. As DP, my role was vital in order to allow the story to flow properly. As soon as the character realised the water had turned black and they were in danger, I shot a high angle to make them appear vulnerable and weak in the situation. Throughout the film, I ensured to shoot with very soft lighting and when grading keep the colours muted. I did this so that when the black water comes into the scene, there is a very obvious contrast between the high key scene and sudden negative light of water. This creates a further feeling of fear and darkness for the audience. For the opening section, I mainly shot between long shots and medium close-ups. This is so that I can intensify the suspense and feeling of the character by shooting tighter once the black water comes in. This is with the exception of one shot. This shot is taken from outside the window of the bathroom. This is to foreshadow the photograph later on. This is also in line with the door locking earlier in the film. Both these things are made aware to the audience but not to the character. The filmmaking method used here is Alfred Hitchcock's bomb under the table. Before I discuss what went well, I'll mention what didn't. As previously mentioned, our original director dropped out soon before filming, which led us going back to the drawing board for the whole project. We originally had a complete script with a 3-act structure about an atheist man who lost his Christian wife. We had put a lot of research and planning into this story, so to throw it out of the window was a shame. In terms of soak, issues were raised during the screening. One was that the clip of the character taking her hair down shouldn't have been there because her arm is covering the frame most of the time. Unfortunately, for continuity's sake, we couldn't lose it because at the start her hair is up and when she goes into the bath it's down. Nonetheless, if we had cut the clip down so it was just the end where her hair was falling, this would have looked good, worked for continuity and not hung for too long. The other issue raised was the last shot being out of focus. The final shot was hard to pull off because the camera is moving from the phone up to her face and then dollies out. I didn't have a first AC to pull focus so I did struggle. When looking back at it after reshooting it again and again, I thought that the out of focus actually worked in its favour because it symbolised how jarring the situation is. Unfortunately, this was a bad decision from me. Originally in the script, we wanted to have a final something to happen at the end. We then decided we would just have the door swing open suddenly. We did shoot this, but in editing, Connie realised that it seemed out of place and the shot didn't look good enough. We felt that this wasn't the end of the world because we could still end on the cliffhanger. In terms of what went well, despite all the issues we had, I feel that what we were aiming to create we managed to pull off well. The shots of the black water coming up to her face from the plug initiate the suspense well. This is then pleasingly intensified with the reverse clips of the black coming out of the sink and shower. To achieve the shower shot, we detached the shower from the hose, poured the dye down the hose, and then blew through it. When it comes to shooting again, I'll definitely make sure that everyone is organised. For this shoot, we had the script and shot list, but next time I will ensure that everyone involved will be involved throughout the whole project. I will also concentrate on the ending for the film, because although this is a cliffhanger, the audience still want more. I feel my storytelling ability has improved greatly throughout the making of this film. I have learned that each part of the film, beginning, middle and end, is just as important as its predecessor. No part of the film should be thought about less. The target audience for this film is anyone who likes independent psychological horrors. This is because the film does not feature any jump scares or demon-like characters like conventional horrors do.